So, hello everybody and welcome to this, the latest Books Crypto Club catch-up over Zoom. We have a meeting every Sunday evening, 5 till 6 UK time, when we chat about various types of crypto, blockchain, other activity and so on. And we see what's going on in this space. So let's see who's going to join us today. And don't forget, if you enjoy this, then you can subscribe to the channel. And please do click the like button and the little bell button as well, and anything else that YouTubers do to make this channel more enjoyable for you. Hey, Jonathan, good afternoon.
Hi, Gary. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Hey, good. Hey, we've got a few people coming in today. Martin, good afternoon. Nice to see your nostrils. You think he can hear us? Hey, Martin.
There we go. I think I'm there.
There we go. We're in business. How's everyone doing today?
Yeah, very well.
Mark's looking happy. He must have done quite nicely with trading this week.
No, it was just a nice sunny day. So, yeah, not a bad day.
Yep. Okay. Jonathan, any news? Anything exciting going on?
No, just went for a nice walk this afternoon. So, yeah. And went to see a Banksy yesterday on the side of Reading Prison.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, there was an alleged one painted on a pub in Marlow. But I think it was a fake one that someone put up just to do a bit of publicity.
Yeah, I think people thought it was a fake one in Reading, but he did confirm it. So,
okay.
Yes.
So I guess that ties in quite well with crypto, actually.
I was thinking that with NFT.
Yeah, the NFT one, yeah.
Yeah, because there's this whole non-fungible token space. Martin, I don't know if you're familiar with this.
Yes, I am. No, I know it's a sort of new art forms are being formed based on it, and concerts, and it's just a way of paying for. It's a verifiable piece of money, I guess, like crypto.
Yeah, well, all an NFT is, a non-fungible token, is effectively it's a digital representation of the ownership of an asset in some way, whether that's physical or virtual. So it started a little while ago when they started issuing NFTs for things like gold coins, but now they've extended it to be like digital artwork. So it's really growing in the crypto art space at the moment. I don't know, has anyone bought any crypto art?
No, but I noticed that Jack Dorsey is selling his first tweet or something as an NFT.
I wondered how that gone up to sort of 20 million quid or something. It's something ridiculous.
Yeah.
Huge amount of money. So I don't know how you can sell a tweet, but yeah, I guess there's a way. So yeah.
What's going to be really funny is when it turns out it's John McAfee who's bought it.
Prison. Yeah, that man has got prior, hasn't he? I mean, he was accused of murdering his neighbour in where was it? Somewhere in South America where he was living.
Belize. Was it Belize?
Yeah, I think his neighbour had killed dogs, and then he'd gone over there and I don't know, who knows? Allegedly, something had happened to the neighbour, and then John McAfee went on the run. But no, he's certainly an interesting character, that's for sure. But yeah, so he was accused of pumping and dumping, right, with crypto.
That's right. Although he claims that any crypto he's been involved in, he's always kept hold of. He's never got rid of, and so he's arguing that he's not done any pump and dumping, and he's actually a real believer in the crypto space. The SEC may have other ideas.
I'm sure but that doesn't mean he hasn't done. Well, who knows? I guess it'll be up to the courts to prove it. But that would be quite tough to prove. It depends if he converts into fiat. I suppose what they normally say is you follow the money and see where that goes. But yeah, what was it? $14 million or something. He was accused of defrauding people of. But who knows?
Is he back on American soil or?
Oh, he's in Spain, isn't he, at the moment? I think.
Right.
Yeah. I think he's in prison, or he's in custody in Spain for.
Right.
I think it's tax evasion over there. So he's certainly a naughty boy who travels a lot. So yeah, interesting. That's for sure.
You live on the edge. Hey, Christian. Good afternoon. So you've just joined us.
Good afternoon.
Hey, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. How are you guys?
grow. Just talking about the latest news, which is mainly about people at the moment, with things like Jack Dorsey's first tweet being sold as an NFT, so a non-fungible token. And then we're talking about John McAfee as well, with his arrest for the possible pump and dump type stuff.
Okay.
So,
I'm quite pleased that EIP 1559 has been set for July.
Translate that into English, Mark. I know that's an Ethereum improvement.
Yeah, the improvement.
Tell us more.
Yeah, the Ethereum improvement proposal 1559, which is changing it from proof of work to proof of stake. Is that right? So, and it's also going to have a major effect on the gas fees. So I've been following that a little bit. There's been a lot of hype as to when that will be released over the last year or so. And recently it's been signed off that it's going to be released in July. So hopefully there'll be the change taking place then, which will then potentially reduce the gas fees and make it, well, the future for Ethereum a bit more secure.
I wondered what was happening to Ethereum, because it seems to have spiked. You know, I joined eToro a couple of days ago, and the whole thing about the feed was Ethereum's up 8%. It seems to be pretty skyrocketing at the minute. But is that based on stuff that's been happening with this future change, or is that just sort of general trading stuff? I mean, I'm new to it. I'm new to watching.
I was thinking that's down to March being a bit of a bad month historically.
Right.
Yeah, it's been quite a quiet couple of weeks, I think, hasn't it? But in the last day or so, it just seems to have started up again.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's sort of across the board.
I always say that the only thing you can be sure of is it's probably that a butterfly's flapped its wings somewhere, and it's just a totally random thing. So it may well be linked, because Bitcoin obviously had a real rally in prices for a few weeks, which saw some massive upswings. And as I said to Dean this morning when I bumped into him, whilst on a socially distanced, allowed walk, by the way, for anyone recording this. Yep, I wrote a short LinkedIn thing about it, that Bitcoin's price dropped by something like 20% in a week, I think it was. It's some cataclysmic, massive drop. That means it dropped Bitcoin's price back down to numbers we haven't seen since 3 weeks ago.
That's interesting. With Ethereum, does Ethereum take a huge amount of energy to create, or is it just Bitcoin that's the coin that sort of creates a lot of energy? Or
they are both very inefficient, because they both use proof of work, and so ultimately that's about demonstrating the consumption of computing resources and so energy. So this is the thing that Mark's saying about the EIP, which is the Ethereum improvement proposal. So basically, so it's a software upgrade to move on to finally what's called proof of stake, which is computationally much less intensive, and so much lower cost in terms of consumption of resources. So hopefully Ethereum won't lead to polar bears losing their homes and all that kind of thing.
I mean, could that happen to Bitcoin, or is that impossible because of the way Bitcoin is structured, that it couldn't?
Ultimately, and this is something people don't realize, any cryptocurrency is software written on a blockchain protocol, which is software, and software can be modified. And so ultimately, if there was consensus amongst the community to switch to proof of stake, then it could be done. So I'm saying all it is, it's quite a substantial change. But it would require changes to the software protocol. And if the changes to the software protocol to behave in a different way were all accepted, then you would have a fork, and it basically be a software update, and everyone would adopt it. So yeah, it could happen.
I guess it will. At the moment, I think it's going to threaten Bitcoin, long term, because I mean, I'm just sort of seeing, and the next generation is much more concerned with the environment than our generation. And they're actually moving they are acting upon those instincts. So I'd imagine that as a generation, they will decide well, it may happen earlier, that if Bitcoin becomes known as the planet-destroying crypto, then it'll have to shift, because otherwise it'll become less viable, less profitable.
It's something. If you want to take a look at energy consumption, Cambridge Judge Business School do a really good report on the consumption of energy of Bitcoin compared to other things, and I think at the moment, last year it was equivalent to the entire energy production or consumption of Switzerland. It's now of around about, I think it's the Netherlands or something, so it's creeping up.
Yeah.
But what people don't realise, I think it's responsible for consuming something like 0.5% of the entire world's energy production, which sounds incredible until you realise that approximately 1% of the world's energy production is consumed by TVs in standby in the USA.
Bloody hell! Yeah. No, that's phenomenal.
So it's when you start looking into these numbers, and it's one of these things, you should never look at numbers in isolation, that you suddenly realize that yes, it is a big consumer of energy, but it's consuming energy from places which are next to electricity generating facilities like hydroelectric power, solar power, or they're in Iceland or Greenland or really, really cold places. So they're actually using green energy, whereas the more traditional things that are consuming electricity, like your television set being on standby, is consuming traditional fossil-based energy.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of follows. I accept with people are using the whole impact on the environment argument very strongly at the moment against crypto.
Oh, it's an argument. I get that, but I think both examples you've got there, which is the standby TVs and the crypto, they're both unsustainable. That's my point. Is that if there is a way to make them sustainable, then I think that will happen. It's just a logical thing. But if that means that Bitcoin will survive that type of change, then all the better for Bitcoin. So that's good. That makes sense. And Ethereum, I guess, as well. That's it's trying to get ahead of the game there. It'll be Ethereum, the ethical Bitcoin. Maybe.
Well, that may be it. It may be that it introduces additional features, but bear in mind as to who currently owns Bitcoin and who's currently buying Bitcoin. And yes, there are some, young ethical savers who are keen to that, but the vast majority of them are turning into it's actually hedge funds and commercial organizations who their data centers for their normal daytime processing is probably in excess of Bitcoin's energy consumption anyway. And this is where I argue, where people are saying about the consumption of energy for the Bitcoin process. Well, how does that compare to the SWIFT network? And the SWIFT network is, I think it's about 40,000 computers around the world that plugs in all the banking systems together.
Yeah, I get, Gary. I get it. It's an emotional argument. Like a lot of emotional arguments that are in the press these days, you drill down and look for facts. You find facts, and you scratch your head and think, well, that's a bit odd, but it doesn't change the headlines. And that's the bit I still find there's a disconnect, which I find fascinating. I often ask people nowadays where they get their news from, because it interests me, because sometimes people have sort of points of view that are quite removed from reality, but they're very, very passionate about them. So which means
I guess though, if you're buying Bitcoin as an asset, you're going to store it, you're going to hold it, you're not going to be transacting with it. So then you're not going to be clogging up the network, and therefore the network's not going to be using computational power. So if you're holding it like gold or a building or something.
No, on a micro level, I completely agree. But if you zoom out on a macro level, would you be holding something that becomes unethical?
You may be.
Yeah, I understand that completely. Yeah.
So and that's why I don't hold it at the minute, but that's why I'm sort of thinking, well, does it have a future? And if Gary says it can be made or can be changed so that it takes less power, then I would say yes, it does have a future. So yeah, absolutely. No, that was just my numpty question.
It probably comes back to a point I've made a couple of times in this group previously, that I often ask when I'm doing the training sessions and this kind of stuff. Well, can you tell me when was the first powered vehicle? So go on, Martin, quick test for you, because the other ones, everyone else knows the answer to this. When was the first mechanical vehicle?
Powered by what? Steam?
Oh, well, so this is it. Because most people usually think of powered vehicle as a car.
Oh, okay.
And straight away they think of Mercedes-Benz in 1890 or whatever. But you're absolutely right. The first powered vehicle was actually a steam-powered tricycle for the French army in I think it was 1769.
Yeah.
And it had a range of 15 minutes and it went to 2 miles per hour. Now, you know, that's version 1 of mechanical power. It then took over 100 years to get to the Mercedes-Benz and their first things, which I think were actually petrol-powered. Then later on they went on to diesel. Now we use electric and everything. So it's taken 300 or several hundred years to evolve to what we now have of something that's reasonably efficient. Same with airplanes. You think about the Wright brothers and the first airplane, and you know the propeller and everything. It's the same with any technology. That initially it's inefficient.
The fuel flow between a triple and a 7A are massively different. So, you know, it's on say a Bangkok run, you'd be 20 tons different between the two on the same load, which is huge. And that's just one generation. I mean, they're still making both the aircraft, so it's a huge change. Plus, I guess.
So when you think about that in crypto terms, where, you know, Bitcoin's only been around since 2009, so it's only existed for just over 10 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, give it until version 3 or something like that, and that'll be the one where it's being very, very efficient, I would imagine.
I mean, it's something I mentioned to Dean and I mentioned to you as well. Is it starts to cut across. Tread on the toes of central banks, and I guess that's the other pinch point. I guess when going forward, is that if central banks begin to feel threatened, they will act, and that's interesting to know. I mean, we talked about it in the high street, you know, that they're limited in what they can do. It doesn't stop anybody holding Bitcoin, but I sort of mentioned to Dean that if a central bank, let's say the UK central bank, decided that Bitcoin was a threat to itself, it would simply outlaw it, and it wouldn't stop Bitcoin in the same way that guns are not, you know, they haven't stopped making guns, but they're legal in the UK, so people don't have them, which would change certainly the social way we interact with stuff like Bitcoin. But I'm fascinated by it. I mean, that's the whole reason I got into the whole thing to start with, because
the other thing, because I get to go along to some meetings like with the Bank of England around what their plans are around what are known as CBDCs. So these are central bank digital currencies. So these are, strictly speaking, not cryptocurrencies, but have got aspects that are very, very similar. So the Bank of England, I was in a session a few weeks ago where they said, well, they're looking at things like Bitcoin and blockchains and distributed ledger technology. And they said, you know, they're likely to introduce a central bank digital currency that will have features and aspects that they've taken from those technologies, but it won't be cryptocurrency itself.
No.
So that's one thing. And the European Union is doing a similar thing around an euro. But then equally, I think, is it the British Virgin Islands or somewhere, has just gone live with a state-backed cryptocurrency.
Right, yeah.
And they are the first one. So what you find is that the smaller nations are more attracted to this kind of thing because it keeps them away from the US dollar. As a reserve currency in that. So I think there's going to be a mixture of things. And you can see it in India at the moment, where India has gone through a cycle of being anti-cryptocurrency, pro-cryptocurrency, looks like they're back to being anti-cryptocurrency again now, but have come out with a statement and likely to turn it into law soon about possibly outlawing non-state backed cryptocurrencies. Which is an interesting phrase.
That kind of, well, I mean, also India is an interesting country in the sense that they decided from one day to the next to well, not one day to the next, but in a short space of time, they confiscated I can't remember which notes they were. They were quite high.
It was the 1,000 and 5,000 rupee notes.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And these are no longer legal tender, which was gobsmacking. I mean, I was jaw dropping to see and their whole thing was we were trying to stop the black market, but you just think, wow, it was a bit. I guess there was more to it, but it just shows how much power there is to the whole thought process, really, I suppose. So India's trying to say, for instance, okay, good example, India would outlaw then crypto. They would outlaw non-state-backed crypto like Bitcoin, but it would drive it underground, I guess. So,
well, they've got a thing, because there was also an announcement a couple of weeks ago with JP Morgan, where JP Morgan have just gone live with a project in India with SBI. So SBI is the State Bank of India, where they're now using a cryptocurrency as a settlement layer. So this is a government-backed bank in India now using a non-state-backed cryptocurrency as part of its payments process. So it's not cryptocurrency that's traded; it's just used for settlements between banks.
It's a ledger, or it's a
yep.
It's a risk minimization tool, or again something along those lines. A layer of a security blanket. Call it that.
So yeah. Would it be a private blockchain or something like that in the background?
Yeah, that's right. And so what you're finding is that there are a lot of projects going on at the moment. I was looking at one in the Gulf states a few weeks ago, Project ABBA, which means apparently ABBA in Arabic means borders or boundaries or something, which was inter-country settlements between Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states. And they were using a private blockchain to act as that settlement layer. The same is being done with JP Morgan, with JP Morgan coin, where they've been using that for settlements, and also Ripple, which is regularly in the news at the moment because there's the SEC case going through with Ripple that's been delayed, I think, until August now, where again, Ripple are providing a capability which is it XRPL? I think it is. It's not Ripple, which is...
Ripple is the company, XRP is the currency, and it's the XRP ledger.
Yep, so it's XRPL, which they're looking at using as a settlement layer.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
And that's XRP's big use case is inter-country and intra-bank settlement.
Right.
So it may, for India, it may come down to the definition of what do you mean by state-backed. Because if state-backed means tacit agreement by the government towards it, that is different to the reserves of the government being used to underwrite it. So in the UK, for example, the British pound is state-backed because the Bank of England do clever stuff and that kind of things. Whereas if the Bank of England just said, oh, well, we support Bitcoin, that would technically be a state-backed currency, you know, as in it's backed.
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess, for instance, looking at things like gilts. So gilts at the moment they're turning upwards because obviously, I'm not quite sure why, but I think it's partly to do with the American stimulus. It's partly because inflation is coming into the system. So gilts, for instance, the way that the UK borrow money. So if they were to change the UK currency to a cryptocurrency, I guess it wouldn't change things that much. They'd still have to borrow money from others.
Well, the one change would be with cryptocurrency, apart from the point at which it's created through mining, you can't create it from thin air.
Yeah.
Whereas in the UK, a fiat-based currency, you can. A fiat-based currency comes into existence simply because the central bank writes into a ledger that there's now $1 trillion available, or 1 trillion rupees, or 1 trillion pounds. It then lends that out to the commercial lenders, who then resell it on to retail banks who issue loans.
And this is post the gold standard, I guess. So that was everything, right? And that's the bit that I worry. What I just look at going forward, thinking it's unraveling. Because we had a conversation once where you said, you know, how much debt should there be in the world? You know, if everybody else owes everybody some money. I said, well, nothing. And then I think you said, how much debt is there in the world? I said, well, more than nothing. So there's been some leakage somewhere.
Exactly. For what should be a closed loop system, there's something not adding up.
Yeah.
You got things like in Germany, I think it was announced the other day in Germany, they're now with negative interest rates, I think on bonds.
Right.
Which is kind of bizarre. It means that effectively
you're paying them to keep keep your money.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Which we could see that was going to happen. I mean, that's happened in, I think, Japan in the past.
Right.
And you can certainly see the potential that you'll end up in the UK initially, where it'll be you don't pay the bank to keep your money. However, you may have to start paying for banking services, of which keeping your money is one of them. They'll obfuscate it so it's not obvious initially.
I love the idea that if you have negative interest rates, my pension would be infinite. Great, but it's not going to happen.
Well, it might do, but unfortunately, that loaf of bread will also cost you a 3-bedroomed house every day.
I'm on now, so I mean, my grandparents went shopping with wheelbarrows, so it was those were interesting times. So to say the very least, but no, it's a fascinating thought process, and the Germans are much more obsessive about inflation than most other places in the country in the world, because I guess they've still got some.
They've got a history of it, haven't they? So it's part of their psyche, as you say, back in the 1920s, 30s, and kind of what it led to.
Christian,
that sort of collapse of the economy.
Yeah.
Hey, Christian, are you still there? You might have a view on that. Christian's going.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah.
We're
just talking about the German perspective. What you're thinking at the moment about the economy?
Well, it could be better, obviously. But then at the end of the day, I mean, I haven't followed German news not actively for at least over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
But I know from family and friends, it's slightly an upswing. It's quite resilient. But of course, with COVID, the stimulus packages, health packages, let's face it, there will be a tough time where I'm pretty sure that the VAT will be increased, maybe by 0.5 percentage point or so, because the cost has to be recovered somehow, and we all know who's going to pay for it. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, and I think that the uptake in cryptocurrency will definitely help as well. That's just my take.
Yeah.
Christian, do you trade cryptocurrency, or do you just hold it?
No, I just hold it. I mean, I've bought a little bit of Bitcoin. I sold it and then bought it again when it was cheap, but usually I just buy and hold it. I see it as a future-proof system. I quite like it. And I had a bit of a discussion as well. By all means, I'm not a financial advisor, or I'm not very smart when it comes to I'm not an economist. But we had the chat as well where a friend said, well, the United States is so rich. And I read somewhere that all the foreign investment, if you took it out of the US, it would literally be, I mean, it's already bankrupt. But the whole monetary system is just completely crazy. So to answer your question, yes, I hold cryptocurrency. I believe in it. Although I have to be perfectly honest, I only believe in a few projects that I think are worthwhile, that make sense.
Like Bitcoin, for instance, and any other projects that stand out?
Yes. Actually, for me, it's definitely Bitcoin. It's Ethereum. And now that I know what Ethereum does, it makes sense. At the same point, Cardano. I quite like ARK, although to be perfectly honest, I haven't fully read the white paper yet. But it sounds a bit similar like Polkadot, but I think ARK has suffered the same fate as ADA, where ADA was really thoroughly built from the ground up. And the instant fame was replaced by illogical thinking. And I honestly believe that ADA is a very good project. So is ARK. So, Polkadot might be just out there. I'm not sure. I haven't read the white paper. I'm not sure if they're exactly similar.
And just to confirm, ADA is the cryptocurrency from the Cardano Foundation.
Yes.
That's right, isn't it? Yeah. So that's Charlie Hoskinson and such things. So a pretty good team who know what they're doing, with a lot of things on there. But with Arc, with you describing it as similar to Polkadot, is it an interoperability play then? Is it to facilitate transfers across blockchains?
That's what I understood, yes. But I think there is a little bit more involved as well. I don't know if it's just a settlement layer for that it's literally independent of the blockchain. I started reading last week, and then I have to be honest, work got busy and I didn't really finish the white paper. But it sounds pretty interesting. But it sounds like that they've taken their time as well with regards to network updates, etc., with staking. I'm just flicking through it now, and I think they had quite a lot of companies behind them as well that support the project. So if anyone,
where are they based, Christian?
you keep asking me questions. Arc.io, that's all I'm saying. I'm sorry. I usually had all this information in my head, but let me see about the company. I can tell you in a minute. Give me a minute. Thank God I've got a smartphone and internet. Where are they? Where are they based?
Let's see if I can.
Mark, do you trade crypto then?
I do a bit of trading. I do a bit of holding.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
When you trade, timescale do you trade? Do you tend to trade sort of short term or?
I've learned not to do it too short term. So I've used a bit of Binance. I've used a bit of my favorite one at the moment is using Swissborg, because it's a relatively low fee exchange. Well, they find that the cheapest fees and the cheapest exchange rates. It's quite good. And a bit on Coinbase as well.
And what's your time scale? What time do you try and stick to a time scale, or do you have a strategy, or do you?
I have a number that I try and aim towards, and
right.
when I hit that number, I'm very tempted to press the sell button.
All of it,
or some of it, or I decide not to sell it and then I regret it afterwards. As was what a couple of weeks ago.
I love the
that's where the trailing stop loss system comes into its own. Sort of moving the stop loss system up behind the price as it rises.
And that's would that be with Binance? Would it be with
Binance itself natively doesn't have a trailing stop loss.
Okay, right.
Okay, so that's when you need to use another site to integrate in with it to set a trailing stop loss. And I think 3 Commas has it. I've not used it myself, but then they charge per trade as well.
Yeah.
eToro do it. You mentioned, Martin, that you just joined eToro. So you can set a trading stop loss on it.
Yeah.
I think. Pretty sure it can.
eToro, like a lot of spread betting firms, do they have do they vary the spread whilst you integrate with it, whilst you interact with them? I mean, because I know I did some spread betting a while back, and what perplexed me was how the spreads would vary throughout the day. Just on.
I don't think it so much varies throughout the day, but it does vary from coin to coin, and I guess over a period of time, depending on
volatility.
It may change.
I get the impression that the spread works in a similar way that you get spreads on anything else. That anything that is high volume, high liquidity, the spread will be quite tight. But anything which is less popular, there'll be a wider spread on it, so that they can make their margin on it, definitely.
And what happens if it's bleeding obvious where it's going? Does the spread get bigger, or do they sort of just take the? No, it probably just stays.
No, that was a shaking, as in I don't know.
Yeah, right.
I don't use eToro, and I know eToro, Revolut, and Ziglu are all increasingly popular avenues for people to get exposure to crypto, but you don't actually own the crypto.
No.
You do.
No, you don't.
Well, it's on. You don't have a private wallet.
You don't have the private keys. So
Yeah,
with
but the actual crypto is bought.
Yeah, and it's held on
by
your
the
behalf.
yes.
Yeah,
But
but you do not own the private keys. You own the right to the cryptocurrency.
Yeah,
but you do not own the actual private keys. Yeah.
But what I mean is that the actual crypto is bought.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a phrase for it. I can't think what it is, as opposed to some companies, some trading setups where it's following the price of the.
Yeah, it's not mirror. They're hard buying it.
Yeah.
So it's a custodial service that they're providing. And the thing with that is that they also hold, I believe, from the conversations I've had with a couple of people, they do hold their own pools of that crypto as well. So if they wanted to, and this is just like share trading you get as well, where some brokers will hold their own pool of something, and then you can trade against that. And then that allows them to play tighter margins because they may have bought that crypto themselves at a lower price and they're now trading it at the market price, but not having to go out to the market, buy and sell it on the blockchain.
Is it a bit like
very, very slow?
Is it a bit like Betfair? I mean, one of my colleagues was involved with Betfair. I didn't realise because we were away somewhere, and he said, "I'm just going to go watch the Chelsea v Arsenal game." I said, "What? You're a fan?" He said, "No, I hate football," and that was really odd. But he was one of the sides of Betfair, so he was part of a syndicate, like a mathematical syndicate with PhD doctors and things, where they were a betting syndicate, and they were offering the other side of Betfair. I didn't realise Betfair was just a conduit for betting, connecting fans to people that will actually provide the money and the odds, and they just take a little bit of they just provide the picks and the shovels for people to go and make money. So I guess some of these terms, that kind of what you're describing is some of the traders in this sort of scheme will have their own currency that they can lower the spreads with. Yeah.
It can be with likes of Betfair though. I think they're offering, is it make a trader type things, where effectively they've got people who will lay a bet and people who will make a bet. So if you say Everton's going to win 2-0 and I think they're going to lose 2-0 or whatever, as long as we can agree on odds,
yeah,
we're effectively trading, and Betfair do that. There are some crypto providers who do that kind of thing, but more often than not, I think the likes of eToro and that kind of thing, if you go to eToro and say, hello, I'd like to buy 1 Bitcoin, please, what they don't do is go out to the open market and buy Bitcoin on your behalf. What they'll do is that they'll have a pool of Bitcoin already, and they'll allocate 1 Bitcoin worth to you in some way. So it is a custodial thing.
That's the other bit. Yeah, the other bit I learned the hard way was that was Revolut, when there was a Bitcoin Cash fork. Is when it forks and you want the other half of the fork, they tell you to fork off, because all they're doing is mirroring the one side of the fork that you've actually invested in, not the other side. Obviously, the price goes up for the fork, drops below it, and they'll say, "Yeah, you can have that," which is not the other bit, which is interesting. So yeah, no, it's a learning process, that's for sure.
I guess would players like Coinbase do something very similar to that?
I think Coinbase you own. No, I think with Coinbase you own the. Well, I don't know.
With Coinbase, you actually own the. I mean, it comes down to if at some point you have a wallet into which you put the private keys of the asset that you've purchased, then you own it.
Because I think Coinbase, you can have vaults and things like that. Yep. So so you can take it out of the pool into something that you own yourself.
Yeah. So I think they may. I'm not sure about Coinbase or Coinbase Pro, which is the more expensive version, but I think it's possible that when you do take it into your offline vault or whatever, that's where they charge in some way. I may be wrong on that.
I think because there's a transaction fee across the network, because it's going into another wallet, effectively.
Yeah.
So to get it into Trezor, for instance, if you've got a Trezor or a Nano, you would then have to pay. You have to have a Coinbase Pro account in order to extract it from Coinbase into your own device, or could you do that with an ordinary account anyway?
I can't even remember now, because that's what I've done in the past with Binance and Kraken.
I think it's with an ordinary account you can do that, because you just send it to another address, isn't it?
Yeah, as if you're paying somebody and then you're just paying yourself. That's fine. Gotcha.
Chris, good evening. Good to see you joining us.
Yes, thank you very much for that, Gary. Yes, I must set the alarm. I keep turning up late to these occasions.
No.
Fashionably late.
No, not a problem. People are always welcome along, no matter what time they turn up, or whatever. That's not a problem. So, are you active in the crypto space at the moment, Chris, or are you just sitting back and watching what's happening?
No, actually, we bought a bit more Ethereum and Bitcoin just about 10 days ago, but a bit less than that, about a week ago. Okay.
Not a bad time to buy. Not that that is a recommendation in any way.
No.
That's good. And how are you finding in terms of learning and understanding? Are you getting to grips with this still?
Well, yes. I mean, there's always, as with everything, the moment you sort of branch out of something that you know how to do, you find there's a large area of unknowledge. Yes, and which leads to the odd mistake, but then we tend to learn through those, I hope.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I set this group up originally, was because when I first started getting into it, I realized that there were things where you could make mistakes. And I believe I'm very good at making mistakes, but I don't have enough time to make them all myself. So I thought I'd join a group of people who can help share their mistakes, and we can all learn much faster in that way.
We're the canaries, are we?
You're amongst friends. But it's true though. You know, the great way of learning is from making mistakes, but the even greater way of learning is from other people's mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, and also being open about what your thought processes were. I mean, certainly for my industry, that's something that I'm always interested that other industries don't do that, where you just say, well, what happened? They don't say, whose fault was it? Just don't know what happened. And then, you know, you explain to what happened, even if you screwed up yourself, you know, you explain to them exactly what the thought process was, and then you find ways of not doing it again. That's the whole point of it. Chris, did you buy through Coinbase and you hold it yourself, or do you hold it on an exchange? How did you purchase and keep your Bitcoin?
Well, I've used Coinbase and I've used Binance. I think the last one I did was with Binance. Yeah, and then I transfer it to my Nano wallet.
You keep it. That makes sense, because it's a sort of, that's kind of the process I'm getting to, with which is what I should have done when I first bought Bitcoin. I mean, I eventually got, you know, I mirrored it through Revolut, and then got out. But again, at the minute right now, it would have been far more sensible to actually have it, you know, physically have it. But something that Gary mentioned a couple of days ago was that, because you were saying that there's banks in Switzerland that put the nanos and things into vaults. So they put the Bitcoin onto the vault and then onto the nano, and then put the nano into a vault. Great. But there's a problem with the seed or the... Yeah,
so I'd refer you back to a couple of weeks ago. I actually did a walkthrough of how a crypto wallet works, right, and the relationship of private keys and public keys and so on. And when you think about how crypto actually works, is that the crypto doesn't sit on a wallet. What happens is an account balance sits on a blockchain. So it's a bit like having a PO box number, and PO box number 12345 has got 3 Bitcoin on it. Your private key is what gives you access to that PO box. Okay, and it's what allows you to take stuff out of that PO box. So you sign it and you send it on and so on. So it's the private key that is the really, really important thing. And it's the private key that sits on your nano ledger or your software wallet or whatever. The problem with the private key is effectively a random number that, because of the sheer scale of potential numbers it could be, it's pretty impossible to crack. And there's a link cryptographically between the private key and what's known as the public key, which is then converted into a wallet address. The problem is that some software on wallets use what's known as a seed phrase effectively to generate that private key. So that they take from, I think it's, it varies quite often. It's, I think it's a 24-word seed phrase for some wallets, and it generates using an algorithm a private key from that 24-word seed phrase. Now, the thing with algorithms is that they are deterministic, which means if you put the same words in another time, they'll give you exactly the same output the next time. So you can have a situation where you go and get yourself your new Trezor or your Nano or whatever, you have a 24-word seed phrase which relates to the private key. The private key goes onto your physical device. You then go and transfer a load of Bitcoin onto the wallet address that you've got the private key for, and you go and stick that nano ledger or whatever in a vault in Switzerland, surrounded by armed guards, blah, 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 blah. But if you've written that seed phrase down somewhere, and someone takes that seed phrase and uses the same algorithm to recreate the private key, they've now got access to the blockchain, which has got the who's got what on it.
They can take your stuff out from your postbox. So yeah, no sense, right?
Yeah, so it is quite funny because I'm doing some work with a secure custodial solution at the moment. It's a bit like a nano ledger, but genuinely military grade hardware, which is encased in an epoxy gel, such that if you broke into the device, it's like a tamper resistant type thing, it would break it. You can't put little jumpers on it to uncode it or whatever. That's linked in to what's known as threshold signatures. So that's better than multi-factor authentication. And it goes across a network, which is what's known as zero trust network, which is like VPN on speed. So it's all hyper secure. It's quite an impressive thing that hopefully in the near future I'll be able to share with
I think
people
that
here.
the most secure thing I know of is a dump in Wales.
Yeah.
Where
there's a PC sitting in it somewhere. But the thing with, I'm having some conversations with some crypto custodians at the moment, and they are literally like the Swiss banker types, and they're saying about how secure they are. And you look at the contracts that they've got with companies providing it, which is genuinely how many armed guards there are on duty and all this kind of thing. And you go, so are you using like threshold signatures on that device for the private key?
Nope.
I said, oh, no, you know, Johan creates the private key. Right.
Yeah.
Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah, it's human people involved. It's humans involved again, and then security breaks down. But I guess that's true of anything, isn't it? Any cash, any bank transaction, any even sort of physical assets that you have at home. So
well, I remember I went to a talk a number of years ago by Sir David Ormond, who at the time was the Director General of GCHQ. And we were asking him the question about how had Edward Snowden got away with downloading all this data from when he was working with the likes of the NSA. And he said, oh, that's quite obvious. He said, you never trust the man in the basement.
Yeah.
And he said, that's all it was. It was that the guy was left to his own devices. You should never allow secure things to be accessible by one individual. You always need like multiple keys and that kind of thing. So
that's security, I guess. Yeah.
So when you all end up with enough crypto type holdings where you're thinking of using security guards with armed guards and basement nuclear vaults and that, come and have a chat with me.
Yeah.
So anyone heard any other news in the crypto world this week? Anything else happening?
Gary, do you know any very good crypto traders, or what their strategies are?
So my definition of a good crypto trader, first of all, is, and I'm sure you've heard it before, that they've got to possess three things.
Yeah.
Which is the private yachts, the private island, and the private jet. So the closest I've seen to that is Tony Vase, who seems to be very successful. He's in Dubai at the moment because I know he's out there because I follow him on Instagram, and he keeps posting all the parties he's going to. And it's bizarre how many people I know who are in Dubai at the moment. So I think Dubai has become the crypto capital of the world while the lockdown is on.
Yeah.
Because whilst they're very secure in terms of wearing masks and testing and that, once you're in a private area, you're left to your own devices. So Tony Vase is out there at the moment, and he's on a yacht, I think, or he's going on yachts.
I think Chris from Crypto is there as well, isn't he?
Yeah, I think there's an event or something going on out there, because I think Roger Ver might be there as well.
I think so as well, yeah.
Yeah. So right now, you know, where people are talking about the risk to crypto infrastructure if the Chinese miners fell over wherever, the real problem right now is if Dubai got shut off, I think most of the world's leading crypto traders are there.
What sort of things does Tony do? Does he just he's just built up over time a very does he volume trade, or does he?
So he is a former Wall Street trader. So he used to trade, I think it was FX possibly, and I believe he now trades only in Bitcoin. So he's very, very specific about that. He'll only trade in Bitcoin, and sets up his strategies and then goes off and parties.
Right. Yeah. Implements them, and you don't know timescale. You don't get to see what his. And that's the thing with FX. You can actually see people's movements, but with this.
So that's the useful thing, at least with eToro. That eToro, I believe, where you can mirror trade and copy trade, so you can actually see what other strategies some other people are using. The problem is that you only get to find out what their strategies are, not why they are.
Right.
So you see an execution, and then yours will follow, but you don't necessarily know what their thinking is behind that execution. But I think on eToro, they're quite active on like social networking type sites or whatever, where they will chat about things.
They do also, on a fairly regular basis, have sort of workshops with some of the top traders. So webcasts, you know, so you can hopefully on those find out a little bit of the background as to why they trade in a certain way.
Yeah, no, there's certainly a lot. I mean, I did some trading by some spread betting based on currencies quite a long time ago, and it was quite a roller coaster, because I started with £500 and ended up with £3,000 several weeks later, thinking I'd be a millionaire within a couple of months, and then I was back down to £500 2 days later. That's when you begin to understand how, you have to have a strategy for getting. I mean, getting out is probably more important than getting in. And I went and bought myself a trading course at Bloomberg's, and that was quite interesting. There was a couple of hundred people there. That was all sponsored by IG Index, not IG, the other one, City Index. And it was interesting just to see different people's strategies and how they varied. You know, from people who were very much looking at the charts to people that were talking about the planetary cycle of Venus. And it was just such a variety of thought processes that, that must be very hard to follow what somebody's thinking.
One useful... One useful trader I've been following is Ben from BitBoy Crypto. He seems a bit... he's not like a mainstream trader. He's just been trading crypto. He's not a finance guy. But he's done reasonably well, and he has lost a lot over the time, but he's pretty open as to how he's lost it. And he does daily videos, so well worth following him, and he talks about the projects as well. He's my replacement for Ivan on Tech, since Ivan has stopped doing his daily videos.
Does he do that? Is that a YouTube video he does, or is that?
Yeah, and he doesn't have like a Patreon site. He doesn't ask you to pay more to learn more about it. So, so you kind of trust him.
If you pay now, you get all these extra books.
That's right. Yeah.
The thing to remember as well, it's interesting with likes of, I can't remember if it was City Index or IG Index. I used to go on their stock trading courses and that kind of thing, and they were pretty open, and they admitted that around 80% or so of their clients lose money. And you can find the data now, the equivalent with crypto trading firms. And it's exactly the same, roughly the same amount. It's 80 to 85% of people lose money, but the 80% always think that they are part of the 20% who are going to make money, just not yet.
Yeah.
So give it a few more. That's why I always say that the best lesson you can have in crypto trading early on is to have a go and lose, because then it sets you up with a recognition that you can lose a lot of money. Some of the people I know early on fell foul of it really badly because they had a few early goes and the numbers went up and they thought, oh, I can't lose here. And boy, they did.
Yeah.
So so and this is where some of the good practices about like stock trading apply to crypto. Things like being non-emotional, good investment strategy, portfolio diversification, risk analysis. They're all very, very similar, whereupon they differ completely. So how crypto behaves compared to FX or stocks totally changes at times, and it really is. That's why I keep saying it's that butterfly in the Amazon somewhere that flaps its wings, and something weird happens.
I'm quite intrigued to know, has anyone looked at any micro cap coins in crypto?
What's your definition of micro cap these days?
Yeah, it's like what? Up
Penny?
to like penny coin or a 20p coin, I guess.
You mean like Walton Chain and stuff like that, with a market cap of what, 50 million?
Yeah, something like that.
So the smaller one that I particularly like is VeChain.
VeChain.
About 6 cents at the moment.
Right.
VeChain's appearing in social media quite a lot this week as well.
It's a really interesting use case about product traceability and the provenance of products, whether it's luxury goods or whether it's Scotch whiskey or whether it's BMW cars or whatever. And even
cool.
passports.
Yeah.
Which I think there's been some talk about. So yeah, it's certainly as a project is getting much more talked about.
Cool.
It's doing well, but it's still pretty small.
Yeah. What about IoTA? I think I hold a couple of those.
Yeah, IoTA, I think I was mentioning that the other day. They've done a link with Zebra Technologies, who are a RFID stroke barcoding stroke IoT company. They're absolutely massive. And they're in the process of integrating, I think it's via an API link, basically what their devices are doing and a blockchain capability using IoTA, which is really powerful. And IoTA, you've got the likes of, I think, is it Medical Chain or something plugged into it? Or certainly Navin Ramachani, I think his name is, from Guy's or Bart's Hospital in London. He's a real advocate of IoTA because it's a crypto that is designed around supporting IoT devices.
Yeah, that's why I got in some time ago. And oh my God, it's at $1.20. Guys, I need to drop off. I need to check my wallet quickly.
Because I've been looking at Engine Coin, which is for the gaming world.
Ah, okay.
Where they allow you to actually melt your coins and to turn it into some other products. That was trading at like 20p a coin early January, and then now it's at like £1.20.
Bloody hell!
Yeah.
Actually quite an interesting project.
So say that again, Jonathan?
In-game purchases.
Yeah, in-game purchases. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a recent NFT project that was launched, and it went up by 80% in a day, which is crazy.
Who supports this coin right now?
Well, they're in a project. Well, Engine is a company that's based out in Singapore. They're working with Microsoft on a few in-game bits and pieces.
I'll tell you another one. Just
go on.
I was going to say there's another one I need to look at this week, which I think is EWF or Energy Web Foundation, and it's an energy trading cryptocurrency that I think I know a couple of the people involved in it, and the highly credible individuals. And also, I don't know any more about it yet, but it might be just worthwhile Googling that, because I think that's about to go live or has gone live or something.
There is another energy trading coin, which I bought a while back and then dropped out of, Power Ledger, which I think is an Australian-based. I really didn't dig into it too deeply, so I'm not absolutely sure, but I know it was focused somehow on the energy industry.
Yeah. And I think Power Ledger was one of the original ones as well. It's been around for a while. Okay. But yeah, so there's a few around there. I'm just conscious of the time. We're nearly up at 6 o'clock. So I was going to wrap it up and say, does anyone have any last minute questions or queries or anything, or we'll finish for the day?
No, it's very, very, very informative.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, fantastic.
Well, thanks everyone for coming along. Thanks everyone for contributing. Have a great day. Go and wash your hands.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Gary.
See you now. Bye now.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Guys, bye-bye.
Cheers, mate.
Good, Christian.